Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss possible scenarios for the S&P 500 today. It's Thursday, April 24th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Moving on to our news on the docket today. At 8:30, we have durable goods and jobless claims. At 8:30. 10 a.m., we have existing homes. We also have Trump is on the calendar, meeting with someone whose name I am not even going to attempt to pronounce. We should be aware anytime leaders are talking because it's really moved the market. Continuing on, we also have Kashkari at 5 o'clock, and we do have the Kansas City Fed at 11. It means less. It's a regional Fed survey, but be aware of it. Trump on the calendar again at 4:30, and then at 5 o'clock, Kashkari. Trump again at 6:35. So that's what we have today. Let's move on to our charts. And here we are. This is a chart, S&P 500 daily bars with weekly profiles. And just very quickly, I want to discuss this chart, where we've been, where we might go. The big thing for me to be aware of on this chart this week here, we were trending lower. We found what seems to be a bottom of sorts. And we had been trading kind of in this area where these candles are. And then we had our 90-day pause news, and our 90-day pause news happened on 4/9, and 4/9 became the largest ranging day that I've seen in the S&P 500. Rallied, but we clearly found our sellers here. Push back, push lower, we found our buyers here, and we've been bouncing between these areas. We have managed to take this low just briefly, but found our buyers and pushed higher. Something else to be aware of this area here, we're completely in the range of 4/9. This was an inside week, a completely inside week. And then this week, we started by taking the low of the week, and then we found our buyers, pushed, and took the high. So this week is megaphoning. It's megaphoning. And here we are back in the middle of our week. The other thing to notice is this LVN here on this prior week's profile. These 2 days, this is the 14th and 15th, I believe, and I outlined these 2 days as very important in this area, because this to me is where we pushed higher to kind of test, fell back, and then the seller's like, oh no, right here. This is what's going on. Fair enough. So found our sellers once, found our sellers twice, and now found our sellers 3 times a lady, huh? So this is an area where people are interested in selling stuff. Not to say that we, market participants can't buy all the stuff they have to sell and see us push higher, but just be aware that there is resistance here. By the same token, we can say that there are buyers down here. So we know what's going on. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and start to make a little bit more sense of this for something we can use for today. Here's the S&P 500. These are daily profiles with 30-minute bars, RTH only, just the regular trading hours. Here we have that 4/9 day I talked about. Here's the pullback. And here's the 14th and 15th, which to me, I called it a pretty serious fight. You can see from our day yesterday, we pushed and we actually took the high of these 2 days, but fell right back, and we have a double distribution profile with a key LVN just below the prior week's VPOC. Interesting. And so falling below these days, we kind of ended fairly bearishly. Now, what does a double distribution profile mean for us in practice today? Well, it gives us a pretty solid structural line in the sand right here, where from a structured perspective, meaning, structured meaning I'm not going to get long and expect the high to go unless I see this area, unless I see buyers active above this area. Meaning if I get long down here, I'm probably going to be, it's going to be a reversion long. I'll be targeting the VPOC with maybe a runner to this area, and that'll complete the trade. And then if we get back above here, that'll be a whole new situation for me to trade higher. But that's just kind of what I mean with a structural, having that be a structural line in the sand. What are our targets? Well, if we stay below this area, we're obviously targeting, we've already taken the low overnight, so we're targeting gap mid and gap close and this naked VPOC if we continue lower. However, we know that there are buyers in this area, so if they manage to catch traction here and push above, then obviously it would kind of be the trade I just talked about for reversion. But regardless, so our targets, if we push higher here, I would be targeting our LVN. If we are above, if we get above the VPOC, I would be targeting our LVN. The high, we would have to really get above this LVN and show that participants are willing to trade higher. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on our intraday PNF chart. You can see this is the overnight action right here. Two big things to notice right off the bat. Number one, we have taken the low. So we've snapped the one time framing overnight. And number two, this is an exceptionally balanced overnight profile. Very, very balanced. Very, very balanced. So just right out of the gates, without even talking directionally, if this area, if this overnight profile, should it continue to kind of tighten and gain concentrate, kind of concentrate this energy in here, then it would be really nice to just be able to play a clean break of this area if it happens. I don't know what direction it could go, but a clean break either above, we target our LVN, our VPOC, and potentially the high, or a clean break below, we target gap close if it's even still available, gap close, the prior VPOC, prior value low, and whatever zones we have down there, which I don't have on the screen right now. But that's the first thing to be aware of. If this area just tightens up and gives us a nice clean break, then that would be wonderful. I don't know if that'll happen in that way today. We'll go over scenarios. We're going to start with bearish scenarios, and I'll actually start with the one that I think at this point is potentially the most likely. However, it's incredibly, that can change dramatically between now and the cash open. So anyway, we have our LVN region of the profile is right here. Maybe I'll do this with the zone so we can use those as references. So bearish ideas, this zone kind of represents the LVN. So how can this go bearish? Well, we started trend lower from the high yesterday. We haven't really gotten much of a pullback. This is really the best pullback we've got. We'll go over ideas. So if this gets, we'll go over ideas whether this high gets taken or whether it doesn't. So here's the thing. If the overnight high does not get taken, if it just doesn't get taken at all, then I would expect that to be probably because somebody is pretty aggressive and pretty impatient to sell stuff. So, and the action we're seeing here, that I believe there are buyers that are trying to buy this dip in anticipation for a rally, which might happen. But regardless, what happens what if we don't get that rally? Well, we could just have OTF continually pushing price lower. So if we fail to get this high and this we start to see this auction lower, pushing lower, but trying to revert, but we're not getting these highs. For me, that would be pretty bearish, and I would look for a test of gap close. Gap close would be a very important area because that is an area where I could see us potentially lick checking and reverting higher, and everything starts to come undone. But if we take the overnight low and close the gap, take the overnight low, close the gap, and we're still unable to get back above overnight value or this zone, then I'm going to be open for further extension. If we get extension in this way, it would be rather choppy with deep pullbacks, so be aware that can be a more difficult trade. But I think if we start to get below this prior week settle, that's where it could really accelerate if there's more selling to do. Below this zone, this would be my key target for shorts, this VPOC right here in gap close. But if we hit that and the sellers keep pushing, then I'm just going to go zone to zone. And if we get low enough, this prior week's low would be a very important target because it's Thursday. And a big question for a lot of swing term players are, how's this week going to happen? How's this week going to play out? And we have our settlement here. So if we lose this settlement and then we start pushing below the prior week's low, that could really change the tenor of this week. I would be going zone to zone. There's plenty of auction targets. We have Singles right here. So that's how I would handle the bearish situation. I think that if we lose this zone, this is where it would kind of get more interesting from the sell side. From here, this could be finding buyers, in my opinion. What happens if we take the overnight high? Can we take the overnight high and still get bearish? Certainly, because we haven't had a pullback yet. So if we see the market push higher into around this zone, this will be our question mark here. What we could see is potentially the sellers just load the offers and we just fall back and start doing exactly what I just said, which that's a lot of the way that we've turned lately. And it's kind of tough because what we'd rather see as traders, what we like to see is we like to see what else could happen, which is a push, an excess, sellers come in, and then we see this high untouched and we can trade against this high. So we like to see that, and it'd be great if we see it happen like that, but it might not. But regardless, those are two ways. So either if we take this high, how could things still be bearish? Well, I'd have to see sellers just line up and force us down, or I'd like to see an excess, a reversion, and us to not hit that high again, and that would help me to trade short, give me confidence to trade short. Okay, let's talk about longs briefly. How could this market go long? Well, just like I said, if we kind of get that action I said that's just pushing and then reverting, pushing and reverting, and every one of these looks like a long, but we don't get the high, what that actually could do is start to clear out weak longs. And then all of a sudden we hit some price where we can't get back to this low and we take the high. That could really uncork all of the waiting buyers if they are down here, and we could see us start to push higher. Now here's the thing, if it's pretty much the same thing. If we see this action happen and it happens kind of like this, there could be a momentum-based trade like around here to target this zone. But for me, like I just said, for me to get structurally long, I would need to see us get into this area, hold it. I'd need to see rotations expand, us not take the long. And in that scenario, I would start to think, okay, stops are going off. We're going to get to this zone. And if participation continues to increase in this zone, this area, then I would be up for taking the high and seeing continuation. I would go zone to zone above this area. This is really the key right here for longs. That's why this zone is here, is because this is an area where there was a very intense fight. And if we get back up into this area, whoever was buying here, whatever entities thought that this price was a good buy, I am open to that returning if we can get back into this area and seeing stops go off. But if we don't get above this zone, then I'm not going to be looking for the low to be taken. But that's pretty much how the bullish idea could happen, in my opinion. I think we would need to push, try to find some buyers, see the sellers be unable to kind of make further progress, and then an impulse higher. Getting that impulse, then I would look for a test of this zone. But this zone would really, like I just said, this would be the place where this is really the decision zone. We could hit this area and it could just be a test and we start falling. But if we start to find traction in this area, and like I said, rotations expand, we hold the low, then I'm looking for higher prices, and this area becomes the question mark to see if we're going to get to the high. Keep in mind here, within one vola, we have the prior week's high and the prior week's low. That's a fairly unique situation. What could our nothing day be today? This is one to pay attention to because of how balanced this is and how you could easily make a case for both sides. So a nothing day to me in this area would most likely look like we push higher, we take this high, we get into this zone, we start to think maybe we're going to get bullish, maybe, and then the sellers come in, push us right back down. It's not a pullback, it's a reversal, and we end up taking this low. But then at gap close, all of a sudden we kind of find buyers and we push back higher. And this area just ends up tightening up. That could be a potential nothing day, which would be very outside in, where we just megaphone this balanced overnight profile. Another way a nothing day could happen, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a possibility we could get a quick repricing on the open. The quick repricing, obviously, if it's going to be meaningful, it would be either to this zone and holding, in which case we could have a nothing day around this area of balance, meaning everyone thinks, oh, well, we're up here, it's going to get bullish, but we just take the high barely, we fall back, we just chop around in this area, and we just reiterate the fight in this area. That could happen. Further, we could also get a repricing lower. The thing is, everyone is expecting, the market is acting like we're expecting this area to be supported. And we're seeing that so far. It's being supported, meaning it's having trouble going lower. But that support that's keeping us from going lower doesn't mean anything if it doesn't force us to go higher. What I'm saying is if we just grind into what's clearly support, but we never go higher, then we could eventually off balance all of those longs and just float lower. If we get a driving open that takes us to somewhere near the prior week's low very quickly, that would be that we could potentially see a nothing day within this day. A nothing day within this day, or that could also portend a drive lower, in which case it might look like a nothing day, but then we start continuing, in which case that would fall into the category of one of the initial bearish ideas I mentioned. But anyway, I'm going to cut this off here. I'm tending to go too long on these. I also want to briefly mention just overall, what am I doing here? And, so folks that maybe aren't in Convergent or are newer can understand. And what I'm doing is I'm just visualizing potential paths the market could take, and I'm visualizing how I may trade them. And for me, that is the essence of how I plan. It may seem just like drawing lines on a chart, but for me, I'm legitimately visualizing what I'm doing here. One of my other big hobbies is jiu-jitsu. And to me, this is very similar to preparing for a jiu-jitsu tournament. Like, I'm going to come out, we're both going to be standing up. What are the things I want to do? What are the things how it may be countered? I want a single leg takedown. Okay, I get the single leg. Then what happens? Am I able to get to side control? Am I able to, am I able to get to the mount? Blah, blah, blah. Or if I try to do a single leg and my head goes to the inside and he gets a guillotine, what do I do then? That's exactly how I'm thinking about what happens if we push to this area. Then, okay, what are my options? What could be happening? What if we fall from this area? That's exactly how I'm going about it. So I hope that kind of sheds some light on what my thought process is here. But anyway, that's what I got for you today. I'm going to wrap it up because, like always, we're a bit too long. But that's what I got. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you're already having a wonderful day and that it continues. And most of all, I hope you find some way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L. That's what I got for you. Any questions, ask me in the chat room. Ciao.